The year is 2025. The Middle East teeters on the precipice of a catastrophic war between two old adversaries, Israel and Iran. It's a conflict decades in the making, its roots tangled in a complex web of historical grievances, ideological clashes, and geopolitical ambitions. To understand this volatile landscape, we must first journey back in time. Before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran, under the Shah, and Israel enjoyed a period of close cooperation. They were united by shared strategic interests. However, the revolution ushered in a new era, transforming Iran into an Islamic republic. Its theocratic leaders viewed Israel as an illegitimate state, a Western outpost in the heart of the Muslim world. This ideological divide fueled decades of animosity. Iran extended its support to anti-Israel groups like Hezbollah, further inflaming tensions. Meanwhile, Israel viewed Iran's growing military might, particularly its nuclear ambitions, as an existential threat. This mutual suspicion poisoned relations, creating fertile ground for future conflict. The shadow of the past looms large over the present, shaping the perceptions and policies of both nations. The ghosts of past conflicts whisper warnings urging caution, but their pleas are often drowned out by the drums of war. The spectre of history hangs heavy over the Middle East, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace and the enduring power of hatred. But 2025 brought with it a potent cocktail of new anxieties, pushing the region closer to the brink than ever before. The geopolitical landscape of the Middle East in 2025 was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. The region was a tangle of alliances and rivalries. The old order was crumbling and new power dynamics were emerging, creating uncertainty and volatility. Israel found itself in a strange new world. The Abraham Accords of 2020 had normalized relations with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, shattering old taboos. This diplomatic breakthrough, driven by shared anxieties about Iranian expansionism, signaled a potential realignment in the region. However, these new alliances did not diminish the threat from Iran. Tehran continued to support proxy militias across the region, from Lebanon to Yemen, fueling instability and conflict. These groups, armed and funded by Iran, acted as its tentacles, extending its reach and influence. Adding to the combustible mix, Iran's nuclear program advanced steadily. Tehran insisted its nuclear ambitions were purely peaceful, but Israel and the international community remained skeptical. The spectre of a nuclear-armed Iran loomed large, casting a long shadow over the region. The Middle East in 2025 was a powder keg. The question was not if it would ignite, but when. The relationship between Israel and Iran in 2025 was like a tinderbox, with several flashpoints threatening to ignite a full-blown war. Each incident, each provocation, brought the region closer to the abyss. At the heart of the tensions lay the issue of Iran's nuclear program. Despite years of sanctions and international pressure, Tehran continued to enrich uranium, inching closer to the capacity to build a nuclear weapon. Israel, viewing a nuclear Iran as an existential threat, refused to rule out military action to prevent it. Beyond the nuclear issue, a shadow war raged between the two countries. In Syria and Lebanon, Israeli forces clashed with Iranian-backed militias, turning these war-torn countries into proxy battlegrounds. Each skirmish, each airstrike raised the stakes and increased the risk of a wider conflict. Adding a new dimension to the conflict was the growing use of cyber warfare. Both Israel and Iran possess sophisticated cyber capabilities which they use to target each other's critical infrastructure. These attacks, often invisible to the public eye, had the potential to disrupt essential services and sow chaos. These flashpoints were like pressure points, each one capable of triggering a chain reaction that could spiral out of control. The world watched with bated breath as tensions between Israel and Iran reached a fever pitch in the spring of 2025. The Middle East, already a cauldron of conflict, braced for another eruption. And then it happened, the spark that ignited the powder keg. In the early hours of April 20th, 2025, a sophisticated cyber attack crippled Iran's Natanz nuclear facility. Centrifuges spun out of control, alarms blared, and chaos reigned. The attack, a devastating blow to Iran's nuclear program, bore all the hallmarks of Israeli covert operations. Iran, outraged and humiliated, vowed swift and devastating retaliation. Accusations flew across the airwaves, each side blaming the other for pushing the region to war. The world held its breath, fearing the worst. The blame game was irrelevant. The die was cast. Section 5 War erupts fire and fury. Iran's response was not long in coming. Within hours of the Natanz attack, Iranian missiles rained fire on Israeli military bases and strategic facilities. Tel Aviv, the heart of Israel, shook under the impact of explosions. Sirens wailed, sending people running for cover. The night sky glowed with the eerie light of rocket trails and detonations. Israel, its famed Iron Dome defense system, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the attack, retaliated with full force. Israeli fighter jets screamed across the skies, targeting Iranian military installations, air bases, and suspected missile launch sites. The cyber realm, already a battleground, became even more intense. Both countries unleashed sophisticated cyber weapons, targeting each other's critical infrastructure, attempting to cripple their enemies' ability to wage war. Power grids flickered, communication networks went down, and financial markets plunged into chaos as the digital battle raged alongside the physical one. The Middle East descended into chaos. The sudden eruption of violence sent shockwaves across the world. News channels broadcast images of burning buildings and fleeing civilians, bringing the horrors of war into living rooms across the globe. Section 6 The world reacts. A chorus of condemnation and fear. As news of the outbreak of war between Israel and Iran spread, the international community reacted with a mixture of condemnation and fear. World leaders scrambled to contain the situation, fearing a wider escalation with catastrophic consequences. The United States, a steadfast ally of Israel, pledged its unwavering support. It provided additional military aid and deployed naval forces to the region, a show of force intended to deter further Iranian aggression. Russia, with its close ties to Iran, found itself in a delicate position. It urged both sides to exercise restraint and called for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. But its calls for calm rang hollow against the backdrop of continued arms sales to Tehran. The European Union, long a proponent of diplomacy, led international efforts to broker a ceasefire. European diplomats shuttled between Tel Aviv and Tehran, desperately trying to find a path to de-escalation. Global oil markets reacted with panic. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway for global oil shipments, became a potential flashpoint as fears of Iranian retaliation sent oil prices skyrocketing. Fear hung in the air, thicker than the smoke billowing from the battlefields. Section 7. A human tragedy, the cost of war. As the conflict raged on, the human cost of the war became horrifyingly clear. The fighting, concentrated in densely populated urban areas, resulted in a heavy toll on civilians. Hospitals overflowed with casualties, their corridors echoing with the cries of the wounded and the sobs of grieving families. The United Nations estimated that hundreds of thousands of people were displaced by the fighting, seeking refuge in neighboring countries, already struggling to cope with existing refugee crises. These desperate men, women, and children, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and the scars of war, became a poignant symbol of the conflict's devastating impact. The war disrupted daily life, leaving its mark on every aspect of society. Schools shut down, businesses were destroyed, and hospitals struggled to function amidst the chaos. Food and medical supplies ran low, adding to the suffering of those trapped in the crossfire. The world watched in horror as the conflict exacted a terrible toll, a stark reminder of the human cost of geopolitical gamesmanship. Section 8. The Abyss Gazes Back, Escalation and the Nuclear Threat. As the days turned into weeks, the conflict showed no signs of abating. On the contrary, there were alarming signs that it was escalating, drawing in regional actors and raising the spectre of a wider conflagration. Iran, facing mounting losses, activated its network of proxy militias. Hezbollah, armed with thousands of rockets, unleashed a barrage of attacks on northern Israel, opening a second front and stretching Israeli defenses thin. The conflict, once confined to Israel and Iran, threatened to engulf the entire region. Adding to the anxieties was the growing fear that Iran might resort to using weapons of mass destruction. While Tehran possessed no confirmed nuclear arsenal, its ballistic missile program and its history of supporting terrorist groups raised concerns that it might use chemical or biological weapons in a desperate attempt to turn the tide of war. The possibility of escalation hung over the conflict like a Damocles sword, a chilling reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of unchecked aggression. Section 9. Uncertain Futures, Paths to Peace and Peril. As the conflict dragged on, the world watched with a mixture of apprehension and hope, uncertain of what the future held. Would the international community find a way to broker a lasting peace? Or would the violence escalate, dragging the region into a wider war with unforeseen consequences? Several scenarios seem possible. A negotiated ceasefire, brokered by the United Nations or other international actors, could halt the immediate fighting. However, achieving a lasting peace agreement, addressing the root causes of the conflict, seemed like a distant prospect. Another possibility was a prolonged stalemate, with neither side able to achieve a decisive victory. Such a scenario, while preventing a wider war, would likely result in continued suffering for the people of the region and further destabilize the Middle East. The most alarming possibility was a further escalation of the conflict, potentially drawing in other regional and global powers. The use of weapons of mass destruction, whether by Iran or by other actors, remained a terrifying possibility, one with the potential to unleash unimaginable devastation. As the world grappled with these uncertainties, one thing was clear. The conflict between Israel and Iran had no easy solutions. It was a stark reminder of the importance of diplomacy, the fragility of peace, and the urgent need for international cooperation to address the challenges of a volatile and interconnected world.